Explosions were heard in Jerusalem early today as Israel warned of a fresh missile salvo from Iran. Sirens rang out across cities, including Haifa, where a residential building was hit. The residents of Haifa take shelter in the city's historic subway. Here's what a resident had to say.
Nowhere, and it's all very, I don't know, surrealistic right now. Like the train still running. Yesterday there was like everything, there was bombs outside and everything, and then the speaker of the train said like, oh, the train for downtown is leaving in 5 minutes, and someone laughed like nothing stops the Carmelit. You know, it's like, so everything is very surrealistic.
Israel's military confirmed strikes on Iranian surface-to-surface missile sites. Officials say the IDF is operating over central Iran. Air defense systems remain on high alert. Search and rescue teams have been deployed to multiple hit locations. A 72-year-old woman is among those injured. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed Iran would pay a heavy price for the deaths of civilians, including women and children. On the other side, Iran reports that Israeli strikes have killed 224 people since Friday, most of them being civilians. Among the dead is Revolutionary Guard's intelligence chief Mohammad Kazemi. Iran has activated air defenses in Ahvaz amid more attacks. Officials warn Israel that shelters will not guarantee safety. Iran has also accused Israel of a deliberate strike on its foreign ministry building. The government has told mediators it will not negotiate while under attack. A senior Iranian commander has threatened a devastating response that could render Israel uninhabitable. The region remains on edge as the escalation intensifies. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said she told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that a negotiated solution with Iran is the best long-term path for peace. Speaking at the G7 summit in Canada, she backed Israel's right to defend itself but urged diplomacy over conflict. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump, before departing for the G7 summit, said Iran and Israel may need to fight it out before a deal can be reached, though he maintained that Washington continues to support Israel's right to defend itself. Here's what he has said.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens, but sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
Have you asked Israel to pause their airstrikes into Iran?
Well, I don't want to say that.
A senior U.S. official confirmed Trump vetoed an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. French President Emmanuel Macron dismissed the idea of Russia mediating, citing Moscow's ongoing violations in Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Macron have also said their countries did not participate in Israel's operations against Iran. Here's what Starmer has said.
The conflict with Israel and Iran is centrepiece, and this provides the opportunity to talk to our co-leaders about the fast-moving situation and to make our strong case together that there must be de-escalation of this conflict in the interests of the region and of course the world.
Now we have guest Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international security expert joining us live from Singapore. Thank you, Professor Gunaratna, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. How serious is the threat of regional war following Israel's strikes and Iran's retaliation? And what would escalation mean for global terror networks?
The threat is now developing into a global conflict where we have seen Russia, China, Pakistan, and a few countries saying that they are behind Iran. So the United States has moved very significant assets including another aircraft carrier is moving towards the Middle East. And that means that it is very likely that even the US may join Israel in the fight against Iran, because the Western nations want a regime change in Iran. They do not want Ayatollah to Khamenei to rule Iran. That is the direction in which the conflict is moving. Certainly, the terrorist groups, Al Qaeda, Islamic State, and many other groups are calling for attacks against Western nations. And we have seen most recently that the current Al Qaeda leader, Saif al-Adel, has moved to Iran. And in fact, all the Al Qaeda propaganda are insisting on attacks against US, Western, Israeli, and Jewish targets. So this conflict has a bearing on the global rivalry between the West and the East, and also is galvanizing terrorist and extremist groups to mount attacks.
And building on that, Professor, was the Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader a legitimate counter-terror measure or a near trigger for a global catastrophe?
Israel is very likely to eliminate the current Iranian leader. Although he is a religious leader, he has political and military authority. Because we have seen the Israeli strikes have been very, very effective. They have eliminated both the regular military and the IRGC leadership, both intelligence and military. And it is very likely that Israel will do what they did to the Lebanese Hezbollah in Lebanon, to the Iranian leadership. Of course, Iran is a very big country, a very powerful country. So this war will last not for several weeks, but for several months. And of course, the Western nations will back Israel in the fight against Iran, because Iran has been a steadfast sponsor of terrorism and extremism globally. Iran also planned to assassinate the US President Donald Trump. A man called Farhad Shakiri was missioned to conduct that attack. So in that light, the Western nations will support Israel in its fight against the regime in Iran, but will urge the Iranian people to revolt against the current regime in Tehran.
And now, staying on this topic, could this be part of a broader Israeli attempt to shift global focus from Gaza to Iran?
Gaza is Israel's primary war, but because Iran was about to develop a nuclear weapons capability, and the International Atomic Energy Agency's report that Iran is not cooperating, Israel seized that opportunity to mount a devastating attack against Iranian nuclear, military, especially missile capabilities. But Iran has now suffered not only attacks against its military capabilities, but against its oil and energy infrastructure. So this war will continue. We only hope that this war will not broaden and will become a wider war, because that will create global financial instability. It will affect trade and commerce. It will, of course, create insecurity between nations and between people.
Now I want to also ask about Iran. We know that Iran's Shah is in exile. And how united is Iran's leadership on how to respond to this attack? Could it expose internal rifts?
There is fragmentation of the Iranian leadership. It is not a unified leadership. Certainly, Khamenei is the religious authority with political and military power. He is directing the campaign, and that is why Israel is very determined to eliminate not only the political but the military leadership, not only the military but the political leadership. But Israel will eventually succeed because it's a very capable military. It's the most powerful military in the region. It's no longer Iran. The same way Israel dismantled the terrorist capabilities of Lebanese Hezbollah, it will dismantle Iran's capabilities. So power shift is very likely. And of course, the Western nations have now decided to support Israel. And as a result, we will see that in Iran itself, the people are likely to rise against the current regime. They do not regard the current regime as a legitimate regime. It has been a very oppressive regime, and it has mounted attacks around the world using the Iranian intelligence services, and also have supported a number of terrorist groups.
Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Gunaratna, for joining us and sharing your expertise as an international security expert. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue